Hey, welcome to another episode of the Bookshelf Podcast. Here we bring you well-researched content backed by authentic sources. So plug in your headphones, hit play, and enjoy. And hey, don't forget to subscribe, it really helps a lot.
All right, so we're diving into some pretty heady stuff today. The Three-Body Problem by Cixin Liu. And you guys sent in a really interesting mix of stuff. Articles, a YouTube review. It seems like we're all ready to go way beyond just spaceships and pew-pew lasers.
Definitely.
This book, I mean, it mashes up hard sci-fi, Chinese history, and some seriously big questions like, where do we even fit in this whole vast universe?
Right. It's not your typical alien invasion story. I mean, the Trisolaris, the aliens in the book, they're on their way, but not for like hundreds of years.
Yeah.
And it's that waiting, that what if that really gets you thinking.
Yeah, and speaking of what ifs, I was reading about this dark forest theory, right?
Oh, yeah.
The idea that advanced civilizations might be hiding, like deliberately keeping quiet so they don't attract attention. Kind of makes you look at the whole quiet universe thing in a new light.
Total Fermi paradox, right? It makes you wonder, like, if we ever got a message from some distant civilization, should we even answer?
Ooh, good question. I don't know. What would you do?
It's a tough one. The book throws it right back at us.
No pressure then.
Right.
But okay, before we spiral into total existential dread, let's rewind a bit. This book, The Three-Body Problem, it's kind of a big deal. Awards, a Netflix series in the works.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. It's huge EE.
Yeah.
This was actually the first Asian novel to win the Hugo Award for Best Novel. That's the top prize in science fiction.
Wow.
The Three-Body Problem basically put Chinese science fiction on the map for the whole world. And it's been influencing a ton of other writers and artists ever since.
And speaking of influence, I mean, this book is so deeply rooted in Chinese history, the Cultural Revolution especially.
Yeah.
One of the main characters, Yu Wenji, her whole life is shaped by that turbulent time, and it's her actions that set the whole story in motion.
Right. What's so fascinating about Yu Wenji is those experiences during the Cultural Revolution, they make her lose faith in humanity. And that disillusionment leads her to do something extraordinary, like reach out to the Trisolaris, knowing the potential risks. It really makes you think about individual responsibility versus like the fate of the whole species.
I mean, if you've seen humanity at its worst, maybe an alien civilization, even one that could be hostile, maybe it starts to look like, I don't know, an option.
Right. It's a morally complicated situation, that's for sure. And Cixin Liu really digs into that.
It's not your typical good versus evil, hero versus villain kind of story.
Exactly. It makes you question your own assumptions about those things. Is Yu Wenji a savior, a destroyer, or maybe both? That's part of what makes the book so gripping.
Okay, let's get a little more into the science now. One thing that really struck me was how Cixin Liu mixes like hard science with these mind-blowing ideas.
Totally.
I mean, the three-body problem itself, trying to predict how three objects will move under their own gravity, that's a real problem in astrophysics.
It is a notoriously chaotic system, which makes the whole alien threat even more unpredictable, even scarier. And then you've got stuff like sophons, these theoretical particles that could maybe, possibly, be used for interstellar communication.
The YouTuber we have in our sources, they were geeking out about sophons. They're like tiny supercomputers packed into a single proton, right? I mean, it sounds like something straight out of Star Trek, but it's based on real ideas from string theory.
It makes you wonder what we think is science fiction today might actually be reality tomorrow, doesn't it?
Right. I mean, how much of this stuff could actually happen?
Exactly. That's what's so captivating about the three-body problem. That blurring of the lines between science and speculation makes you re-examine your own assumptions about what's possible.
And speaking of blurring lines, this book also goes deep into some pretty heavy philosophical territory, especially with that whole dark forest theory. It's kind of a bleak view, right? Like the universe is this dangerous place where everyone's hiding.
It is pretty bleak. Definitely plays on our fear of the unknown. Imagine being out there, surrounded by who knows what. Would you risk making contact, knowing it could make you a target?
That's where Cixin Liu's own background comes in, right?
Exactly.
I mean, he's writing from a Chinese perspective, and the idea of collectivism, of the group being more important than the individual, it really comes through.
Absolutely. It's not just about individual survival, but the survival of the whole group, humanity as a collective. And that perspective changes how the characters deal with the Trisolaris threat.
It's a big contrast to how a lot of Western science fiction deals with things.
It is. Makes you think. How would different cultures react to something like this? A threat to everyone's existence.
Right, how would WE react? It's a huge question, and it's one that the three-body problem throws right at us.
And that's just the tip of the iceberg. We'll be unpacking so much more as we keep going.
Oh yeah, things are just getting started. Stay with us, folks. This is about to get even more interesting.
We'll be exploring those themes and more. The characters, the cultural nuances, everything that makes this book such a powerful and disturbing read. You definitely don't want to miss it.
Okay, so picking up where we left off, I want to circle back to something you said about collectivism in Chinese culture. Seems like that idea really drives how people react to the Trisolarans in the book.
Definitely. The book, it really highlights this tension, you know, between what individuals want and what the group needs.
Mm-hmm.
You see it especially in how different groups within the book, how they approach the whole crisis. Some are all about secrecy and control, right? They think that any individual expression, any little thing could like tip off the Trisolarans and doom everyone.
Ah, interesting.
But then you've got others who are saying, hey, we need to be more open. Suppressing individual thought, that just weakens us in the long run.
It's like those debates we have in the real world, right?
Yeah.
About security versus freedom.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And it makes you think, okay, if we were facing a threat like this, an existential threat,
Mm-hmm.
how would you balance those things? Tough choices. And remember, this whole collectivist perspective, it's something that, you know, Western readers might not be used to. So that adds a really interesting layer to the story.
Totally. Okay, so let's talk about some of those tough choices. You mentioned Yi Wenji and how her actions basically kick off the whole chain of events,
Right.
reaching out to the Trisolarans. And her decision, that was all driven by her, like, disillusionment with humanity.
It's a little more nuanced than that, I'd say. I mean, yes, she's deeply scarred by what she went through during the Cultural Revolution.
Yeah.
But she's not just like some bitter pessimist. You know, Yi Wenji, she's really wrestling with these big ethical questions like, does humanity even deserve to survive?
Mm-hmm.
Could the Trisolarans, even if they're dangerous, could they maybe offer some kind of reset button?
Huh. So it's almost like she sees them, the Trisolarans, as this kind of cosmic judgment.
That's a good way to put it. And it brings up even more questions, right, about how individual actions can shape history.
Right.
Like, what if she hadn't sent that message? Would everything have played out differently?
Whoa. Talk about a butterfly effect.
Yeah.
Okay, but I also wanted to ask about Wang Miao, the scientist, the nanomaterials guy.
Yeah.
He's portrayed as much more, I don't know, pragmatic, skeptical even.
Exactly. See, Wang Yao, he gets pulled into this whole Trisolaran thing through his research, and he's struggling to make sense of it all. The scientific evidence, these wild claims people are making, he's like the voice of reason, you know, trying to hold on to logic when everything's going crazy.
Yeah, I can totally see that. Trying to wrap your head around something that's both, like, totally fantastical and terrifyingly real at the same time.
That's exactly what Cixin Liu does so well. He mixes these mind-bending ideas with just enough real science, you know, to make it all feel disturbingly believable. And the contrast between Ye Wenji and Wang Miao, it shows you how different people can react to a crisis like this. You got Ye Wenji, convinced that humanity needs a complete shakeup, and then Wang Miao trying to deal with it all in a much more grounded, analytical way.
That's a really cool dynamic, almost like faith versus reason, maybe, or despair versus hope.
I like that. And then you layer in the historical context. The Cultural Revolution, it's always there, looming over the story.
Yeah, it's like this shadow, right?
It shapes how the characters see the world, how they make decisions. Like Yi Wenji's whole disillusionment,
Yeah.
it comes directly from what she went through during that time.
It makes you think about, you know, how our own pasts, the things that have happened to us, how they influence how we see things, even on a big scale.
That's deep, and you're right. Cixin Liu, he's a master at weaving these individual stories together. It's like he's creating this tapestry, you know, with all these motivations, actions, and it all leads up to this one question. What's going to happen to humanity?
Speaking of which,
Yeah.
that whole dark forest theory, pretty bleak outlook on the universe, makes you wonder, like, if we should make contact, right?
It is chilling, yeah. The idea that any civilization that shows itself, it's basically painting a target on its back.
I think I'd be hiding under the cosmic covers if that were me. But seriously, the dark forest theory, it raises these huge questions. Trust, communication, survival.
Huge. It's like this cosmic survival game with the highest stakes imaginable.
Yeah.
And the book doesn't give you easy answers. It forces you to consider that the universe might be a much more hostile place than we want to believe.
Okay, now I'm starting to get a little existential dread again. But let's shift gears a bit. What about Ken Liu's translation? I mean, he really brought this story to a whole new audience, right?
He did. It's not just about translating words, though. It's about bridging cultures.
Right, right.
Ken Liu, he had to deal with cultural references, idioms, even humor that might not make sense to English speakers, and he did an amazing job. He kept the spirit of the original while making it relatable to a global audience.
He basically built a bridge, right, between two worlds.
Exactly. It's a reminder that stories can connect us, even across borders, even when they're tackling these big, challenging ideas like in the three-body problem.
And we're back for the final part of our deep dive into the three-body problem. We've covered a lot. The science, the history, all those big philosophical questions that Cixin Liu throws at us. Whew.
It's definitely one of those books that makes you think, about humanity, the universe, the whole shebang.
Totally. And for everyone listening, I hope you're starting to see why this book is such a global phenomenon. It's more than just spaceships and aliens. It's about us, our history, our fears, and maybe even our hopes for the future.
And how Cixin Liu mixes real science with these totally wild ideas. It's amazing. Makes you think without feeling like you're stuck in a lecture hall.
Right. Like sophons, tiny supercomputers, faster than light communication. I mean, that's sci-fi gold. But then you find out it's based on actual theoretical physics.
It really makes you wonder what we think is impossible today could be totally normal tomorrow. And that's a big theme in the book, right? How our understanding of the universe is always changing. What we think is true today could be proven wrong tomorrow.
It's humbling, for sure. We're just starting to figure things out. And it brings us back to that central question. How should we deal with alien contact? Reach out. Hide.
The dark forest theory definitely makes you think twice, right?
Yeah.
The idea that making contact could make us a target.
Yeah. And the book presents some different views, too. Some characters think communication, even if it's risky, it's essential.
Right. Like for our growth,
Yeah.
even our survival.
It's kind of like those arguments we have in the real world about being open to other countries, other cultures, versus closing ourselves off.
Exactly.
Huh.
In Cixin Liu, he doesn't give you easy answers. He makes you confront these moral dilemmas.
Yeah.
What does it even mean to be human, to be a civilization?
And what about Yuwenji reaching out to the Trisolarans? Hero, villain, I'm still not sure.
That's what's so great about Cixin Liu's characters. They're not just good or bad, they're complicated. Yuwenji, she's a product of her time,
Yeah.
shaped by what happened during the Cultural Revolution.
Her disillusionment, it makes sense, even if her actions might have really bad consequences. It shows how our own pasts, our experiences, can really influence our choices.
And that's why the three-body problem is so powerful. It's not just about aliens. It's about us, the choices we make, and what happens because of them.
It's one of those books that sticks with you. It makes you question everything.
That's the power of good science fiction. It challenges us to think beyond what we know, what we believe, to ask the big questions.
Couldn't have said it better myself. So, as we wrap up our deep dive, one last thought. The three-body problem, it shows the universe as this vast, maybe even dangerous place. But it also reminds us humans are resilient, we're creative, and we always have hope for the future.
Maybe someday we will meet another intelligent civilization. And when that happens, the questions in the three-body problem, they'll be more important than ever.
So keep exploring, keep asking questions, and keep looking up at those stars. Who knows what's waiting for us out there? Thanks for joining us on this deep dive into the three-body problem. It's been a wild ride.